Welcome to the third ever FCS Hunger Games.
This is the first ever video format for it, and I'd like to take this time to congratulate our previous two winners, Nichols State in the first game and McNeese State in our second one. I've put tens of hours into this project, and I think you'll all enjoy it. That said, I may have made an error here or there that I didn't catch that you might. If so, that's not for a lack of effort, only diligence, and I hope you'll bear with me. Before we get started, I'd like to trigger warn there are a lot of violent themes up to and including suicide. If that turns you off, there's no judgment here. And with that, let's begin. The Bloodbath. Marist takes a spear, leaning on the cornucopia. North Dakota State, Idaho, and Dayton get into a fight. Dayton triumphantly kills them both. Long Island takes a spear, leaning on the cornucopia. Bucknell finds a backpack of camping equipment. Eastern Kentucky overpowers Monmouth, killing him. Richmond and Elon dash for the same bag of food and supplies. Elon gets scared and retreats. Sam Houston State kills Western Illinois as he tries to run. Sacred Heart is unable to convince Rhode Island to not kill him. Hampton scores a bar mace from inside the cornucopia. Campbell kills Missouri State with his own weapon. Murray State runs away with a sword and some rope. Jacksonville State grabs some landmines, but they accidentally explode. Stetson and James Madison both go for the same axe. Stetson gives up and retreats. Presbyterian, UC Davis, and NC Central get into a fight. NC Central triumphantly kills them both. The Citadel sets Norfolk State on fire with a flamethrower. Northern Colorado is in shock for a moment, and then retreats away from the cornucopia. Dartmouth severely injures Mercer and leaves him to die. South Carolina State sets off an explosive, killing Mississippi Valley State and Wagner. Lehigh spears St. Francis in the abdomen. Holy Cross takes a spear leaning on the cornucopia. VMI runs into the cornucopia and tries to hide from the others. Montana State is in shock for a moment, then retreats away from the cornucopia. Georgetown finds a bow with some arrows. Stony Brook scores a bar mace from inside the cornucopia. Arkansas Pine Bluff finds a jug full of fresh water. Brown and Delaware State share everything they gathered before running. Montana takes a handful of throwing knives from the ground and retreats. Incarnate Word finds a bag full of food. Merrimack grabs a backpack of supplies and retreats. Jackson State and Southern Illinois both go for the same axe. Jackson State gives up and retreats. Bethune-Cookman snatches some arrows from the cornucopia. Maine thinks about grabbing supplies, but decides to run for cover instead. Lamar finds a bag full of food. South Dakota snatches a bottle of alcohol and a blade. Lafayette grabs a trident and food and retreats. Northern Arizona almost kills Lafayette with a throwing knife, but misses. Indiana State runs into the cornucopia and tries to hide from the others. San Diego rips a backpack out of Gardner Webb's hands. Furman finds a bow and some arrows. Columbia runs away with a sword and some rope. Alcorn State takes a couple of explosives from near the cornucopia. Cal Poly takes a couple of explosives from near the cornucopia. North Carolina A&T thinks about grabbing supplies, but decides to run for cover instead. Davidson grabs a sickle, and Princeton gets a slingshot. Fordham takes a spear, leaning on the cornucopia. Charleston Southern snatches some arrows from the cornucopia. Sacramento State and Colgate dash for the same bag of food and supplies. Colgate gets scared and retreats. SEMO and Villanova dash for the same bag of food and supplies. Villanova gets scared and retreats. Morehead State scores a bar mace from inside the cornucopia. Cornell grabs a sword. Weber State finds a bag full of food. Penn clutches a first aid kit and runs away. Western Carolina gathers as much food as he can. Dixie State thinks about grabbing supplies, but decides to run for cover instead. North Dakota and Central Connecticut State both go for the same axe. North Dakota gives up and retreats. ETSU and Duquesne dash for the same bag of food and supplies. Duquesne gets scared and retreats. Tennessee Tech takes a couple of explosives from near the cornucopia. Central Arkansas gathers as much food as he can. Delaware snatches a bottle of alcohol and a blade. Morgan State takes a spear leaning on the cornucopia. McNeese State and Northern Iowa share everything they gathered before running. Prairie View A&M finds a backpack full of camping equipment. Stephen F. Austin snatches a bottle of alcohol and a blade. Valpo finds a bow and some arrows. North Alabama gathers as much food as he can. Albany scares UT Martin away from the cornucopia. Nicholls State grabs a trident and food and retreats. Kennesaw State almost kills Nicholls State with a throwing knife, but misses. Southern takes a couple of explosives from near the cornucopia. Northwestern State gathers as much food as he can. Towson is in shock for a moment, and then retreats away from the cornucopia. Harvard runs into the cornucopia and tries to hide from the others. Grambling State dashes to the forest to avoid the bloodbath. Portland State dashes to the forest to avoid the bloodbath. Southeastern Louisiana clutches a first aid kit and runs away. Samford snatches some arrows from the cornucopia. Bryant grabs a shield from the ground. Illinois State clutches a first aid kit and runs away. Alabama State and Alabama A&M both go for the same axe. Alabama State gives up and retreats. Southern Utah and Drake both go for the same axe. Southern Utah gives up and retreats. Jacksonville grabs the supplies furthest away from the cornucopia and quickly escapes. Butler grabs a backpack, but it's not zipped, and most of the supplies fall out. Chattanooga grabs a shield from the ground. Texas Southern scares Eastern Illinois away from the cornucopia. Tennessee State grabs the supplies furthest away from the cornucopia and quickly escapes. Eastern Washington grabs a sword. Howard is in shock for a moment, and then retreats away from the cornucopia. William and Mary and Robert Morris share everything they gathered before running. Tarleton State dashes to the forest to avoid the bloodbath. Austin P finds a bag full of food. Youngstown State takes a spear leaning on the cornucopia. Wofford runs into the cornucopia and tries to hide from the others. Yale grabs a backpack, but it's not zipped, and most of the supplies fall out. South Dakota State snatches some arrows from the cornucopia. Florida A&M is in shock for a moment, and then retreats away from the cornucopia. Idaho State grabs a trident and food and retreats. Abilene Christian almost kills Idaho State with a throwing knife, but misses. Houston Baptist finds a bag full of food. New Hampshire takes a spear leaning on the cornucopia. Day 1. Lamar, North Dakota, and Valpo try to ambush Texas Southern, Murray State, and Hampton, who kill them instead. Chattanooga, Yale, and South Dakota hunt down and kill Lafayette. Montana State is pricked by thorns while picking berries. Sacramento State sees smoke rising in the distance and wonders who's responsible. Moorhead attacks Rhode Island, but Abilene Christian notices and protects him, killing Moorhead State. James Madison and Duquesne betray Bryant with the aid of a rope. Bethune-Cookman sets off a string of trap explosives, killing northern Colorado and southern Illinois. Northwestern State makes a wooden spear from tree branches. Davidson and Weber State split up and search for much-needed resources. UT Martin hides in a bush, terrified and scared. Stony Brook spears North Carolina A&T in the back with a trident. Northern Iowa tries to sleep in order to reduce stress. Grambling State and Lehigh fight the Citadel and Campbell. Grambling State and Lehigh win easily. Holy Cross falls into a deep valley and dies. Albany throws rocks at Brown from a hiding spot in a tree. William and Mary throws rocks at Florida A&M from a hiding spot in a tree. McNeese State discovers a hidden pathway. Austin Peay and Dartmouth create a fort out of sticks and leaves. Sanford injures himself tripping over a log. Robert Morris rests in a ravine and finds comfort thinking of his father. Columbia and Long Island split up to search for much-needed resources. Merrimack decides to sleep in order to reduce stress. Richmond, Tennessee State, and Wofford are attacked by a herd of vicious dogs. Villanova discovers a water source. VMI fishes in the water for some food. Arkansas Pine Bluff tries to kill Alcorn State, but he's able to escape. Gardner-Webb searches for water and firewood. Jacksonville tends to Central Arkansas's wounds. North Alabama and Cal Poly split up to search for much-needed resources. Idaho State camouflages himself in a cave-type area. Illinois State has a mild panic attack. Central Connecticut State dreams about home back at his district. Eastern Kentucky sings a song while searching for a food source. He finally finds some wild berries. Alabama A&M receives healthy food from a sponsor. Georgetown tries to kill Alabama State, but he's able to escape. Towson and Princeton create a fort out of sticks and leaves. Eastern Illinois and NC Central hunt for other tributes. Jackson State receives a bow and arrow from a sponsor. SEMO receives a bow and arrow from a sponsor. Penn and Butler split up to search for much-needed resources. Kennesaw State sees Houston Baptist, but decides to stay quiet and let him pass. Dayton and Indiana State create a fort out of sticks and leaves. Sam Houston State explores the arena. South Dakota State, Southern Utah, Howard, and Incarnate Word raid Tarleton State's camp while he is away. Youngstown State fishes in the water for some food. Montana overhears Elon and Tennessee Tech talking in the distance. South Carolina State and San Diego split up to search for much-needed resources. Southern sprains his ankle while running away from Cornell. Delaware State begs for Maine to kill him. He refuses, keeping Delaware State alive. Dixie State sings a song while searching for a food source. He finally finds some wild berries. Harvard is pricked by thorns while picking berries. Portland State discovers a hidden pathway. Northern Arizona falls and scrapes his leg while running away from Marist. Bucknell discovers a water source. Drake rests in a ravine and finds comfort thinking of his father. Stephen F. Austin asks ETSU to have mercy on him. Furman injures himself, tripping over a log. Charleston Southern, Colgate, and New Hampshire are attacked by a herd of vicious dogs. Prairie View A&M hides in a bush, terrified and scared. Delaware sprains his ankle while running away from Eastern Washington. Stetson receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Night 1. Villanova convinces Delaware to stand guard for the night while he sleeps. Harvard severely slices Davidson with a sword. Cal Poly and Richmond huddle for warmth and love. Towson sees a fire, but stays in place. Butler approaches Fordham's campsite and asks to create an alliance. South Carolina State stays awake all night on pure adrenaline. Florida A&M feels delirious and forgets where he is. Youngstown State involuntarily passes out from sheer exhaustion. South Dakota convinces Charleston Southern to stand guard for the night while he sleeps. Georgetown tends to his wounds with leaves and water. Columbia questions his sanity. Delaware State begins to cry. SEMO huddles up next to a fire and cooks the meat he hunted earlier in the day. Idaho State tends to his wounds with leaves and water. Wofford falls asleep to the sound of people screaming. Long Island and James Madison fall asleep holding hands. Robert Morris and Dixie State tell stories about their districts and lives to each other. Tennessee Tech tries to treat his infection with water and grass. Marist and Furman tell stories about their districts and lives to each other. Abilene Christian receives fresh food and materials from an unknown sponsor. New Hampshire approaches Alcorn State's campsite and asks to create an alliance. Brown and Northwestern State huddle for warmth and love. Central Connecticut State questions his sanity. Jacksonville and Indiana State run into UT Martin, William & Mary, and Southern Utah to make a temporary peace. Alabama A&M climbs a tree to get some rest. Kennesaw State, Bethune-Cookman, and South Dakota State sing songs together, hoping for the best. Alabama State, North Alabama, and Stetson have deep conversation and discuss the challenges that will come in the morning. Eastern Kentucky and Gardner-Webb run into Duquesne, Drake, and Grambling State and make temporary peace. Arkansas Pine Bluff thinks about winning and what life would be like. Chattanooga, Penn, and Elon sleep in shifts, each hoping the other two do not betray them. Western Carolina is unable to start a fire and is extremely uncomfortable. San Diego and Montana State create a fort for the night. Incarnate Word receives a gourmet 5-course meal from an unknown sponsor. Bucknell lets Samford into his campsite. Southern sees a fire, but stays in place. VMI, Jackson State, and Prairie View A&M sing songs together, hoping for the best. Central Arkansas lets Stephen F. Austin into his campsite. Stony Brook and Montana huddle for warmth and love. Tarleton State and Yale talk about the tributes past and still alive. Murray State tries to sing himself to sleep. ETSU and NC Central huddle for warmth and love. Hampton involuntarily passes out from sheer exhaustion. Northern Iowa climbs a tree to try and get some rest. Princeton and Merrimack run into Sacramento State, Cornell, and Houston Baptist to make temporary peace. Colgate tends to Austin Peay's wounds. Portland State looks at the night stars and sky and wonders if it's real. Southeastern Louisiana begs for Rhode Island to kill him. He refuses, keeping Southeastern Louisiana alive. Eastern Washington receives medical supplies and nuts from an unknown sponsor. Howard receives matches from an unknown sponsor. Illinois State cooks him some squirrels and enjoys eating more than he thought. Weber State starts a campfire with material on the ground. Nicholls State tends to his wounds with leaves and water. Tennessee State receives medical supplies and nuts from an unknown sponsor. Eastern Illinois thinks about his family. Northern Arizona starts a campfire with materials on the ground. Morgan State tends to his wounds with leaves and water. Texas Southern receives medical supplies and nuts from an unknown sponsor. Lehigh involuntarily passes out from sheer exhaustion. Albany, Maine, and McNeese State have deep conversation and discuss the challenges that will come the next morning. Sam Houston State questions his sanity. Dartmouth feels delirious and forgets where she is. Dayton quietly hums in the night. Day 2. Central Arkansas dies mysteriously after going on a diatribe about the Hunger Games. Stony Brook is unable to convince Alabama State to not kill him during their altercation. Austin Peay receives medical supplies from a sponsor. Idaho State dreams about home back at his district. Samford shoots 2 arrows into Fordham's body. Incarnate Word slips on a rock and tumbles down a cliff. ETSU makes a wooden spear from tree branches. Southern Utah receives a picture of his family from a sponsor. Stetson and Houston Baptist fight Colgate and Duquesne. Stetson and Houston Baptist win easily. Dayton and Delaware betray Southern with the aid of a rope. Wofford sets off a string of trap explosives, killing Albany, Georgetown, Columbia, and Charleston Southern. Chattanooga sees Tarleton State, but decides to stay quiet and let him pass. Murray State is pricked by thorns while picking berries. Montana has a mild panic attack. Sacramento State dreams about home back at his district. NC Central thinks about his family and starts crying. Towson injures himself, tripping over a log. Princeton discovers a water source. South Dakota climbs up a tree to make a resting spot. Bethune-Cookman scares Maine off into the distance. Florida A&M receives a picture of his family from a sponsor. James Madison practices his knife throwing and archery. Drake discovers a hidden pathway. Montana State camouflages himself in a cave-type area. Alcorn State picks non-poisonous fruit from a tree. Jacksonville makes a wooden spear from tree branches. South Carolina State and Yale create an alliance. Howard constructs shelter with sticks and grass. North Alabama fishes in the water for some food. Elon picks non-poisonous fruit from a tree. Marist sings a song while searching for a food source. She finally finds some wild berries. William and Mary tries to sleep in order to reduce stress. Prairie View A&M sings a song while searching for a food source. He finally finds some wild berries. Eastern Washington dreams about home back at his district. Lehigh climbs up a tree to make a resting spot. Abilene Christian fishes in the water for some food. Butler receives a healing ointment from a sponsor. Villanova receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Portland State, Central Connecticut State, Delaware State, and VMI hunt for other tributes. Gardner Webb tries to kill Stephen F. Austin, but he's able to escape. McNeese State tries to kill a squirrel with an arrow. Nichols State searches for water and firewood. Furman makes a wooden spear from tree branches. New Hampshire tries to sleep in order to reduce stress. Youngstown State dreams about home back at his district. Merrimack explores the arena. Morgan State picks non-poisonous fruit from a tree. South Dakota State tries to kill Alabama A&M, but he's able to escape. Grambling State tends to Tennessee State's wounds. Kennesaw State falls and scrapes his leg while running away from Rhode Island. SEMO sees poison fog, but manages to escape. Indiana State receives a water spile from a sponsor. Harvard discovers a hidden pathway. Richmond sprains his ankle while running away from UT Martin. Northern Arizona, Dartmouth, Illinois State, and Eastern Illinois raid Cal Poly's camp while he's away. Southeastern Louisiana injures himself, tripping over a log. Arkansas Pine Bluff receives a bow and arrow from a sponsor. Bucknell picks non-poisonous fruit from a tree. Tennessee Tech, San Diego, Weber State, Western Carolina, and Robert Morris hunt for other tributes. Penn and Northwestern State create an alliance. Texas Southern dreams about home back at his district. Dixie State and Hampton split up to search for much-needed resources. Cornell receives healthy food from a sponsor. Brown receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Long Island steals food and water from Jackson State while he isn't looking. Sam Houston State tries to kill a squirrel with an arrow. Eastern Kentucky receives a bow and arrow from a sponsor. Northern Iowa thinks about her family and starts crying. Surviving tributes: Abilene Christian, Nichols State, Rhode Island, Princeton, Prairie View A&M, Portland State, Penn, Northwestern State, Northern Iowa, Northern Arizona, NC Central, North Alabama, New Hampshire, Robert Morris, Murray State, Morgan State, Montana State, Montana, Alabama A&M, Merrimack, McNeese State, Marist, Maine, Long Island, Richmond, Sacramento State, Kennesaw State, Tennessee Tech, Yale, Wofford, William & Mary, Western Carolina, Weber State, VMI, Villanova, UT Martin, Towson, Texas Southern, Tennessee State, Sam Houston State, Tarleton State, Stetson, Stephen F. Austin, Southern Utah, Southeastern Louisiana, SEMO, South Dakota State, South Dakota, South Carolina State, San Diego, Samford, Lehigh, Youngstown State, James Madison, ETSU, Butler, Cal Poly, Florida A&M, Elon, Eastern Washington, Eastern Kentucky, Eastern Illinois, Drake, Bucknell, Dixie State, Central Connecticut State, Delaware State, Delaware, Dayton, Dartmouth, Cornell, Furman, Gardner-Webb, Grambling State, Austin Peay, Alabama State, Jacksonville, Jackson State, Indiana State, Alcorn State, Illinois State, Idaho State, Arkansas Pine Bluff, Chattanooga, Howard, Hampton, Houston Baptist, Bethune-Cookman, Brown, and Harvard. Night 2. Lehigh attempts to climb a super tall tree, but falls to his death. Florida A&M and Sacramento State sleep in shifts, placing full trust in each other. Drake tends to San Diego's wounds. Tarleton State, Stephen F. Austin, McNeese State, and Penn joke with each other. Howard steals Brown supplies while he's asleep. Northern Iowa cannot handle the stress and decides to commit suicide. Princeton attempts to start a fire, but is unsuccessful given the lack of materials available. Gardner-Webb kills Montana with a handmade weapon. Chattanooga falls asleep, shivering from a fever. Shivering from a fever? You can shiver from a fever? Morgan State receives clean water from an unknown sponsor. South Dakota is unable to start a fire and is extremely uncomfortable. Eastern Kentucky kills Hampton with a handmade weapon. NC Central is repeatedly awoken by nightmares. Southeastern Louisiana begs for Kennesaw State to kill him. He refuses, keeping Southeastern Louisiana alive. Eastern Illinois and James Madison spot and kill Yale. Alabama A&M, overwhelmed with anger, bashes Wofford's head against a rock several times. Maine and North Alabama decide to make a peace treaty to make it through the night. Texas Southern and Towson betray Richmond with the aid of a rope. ETSU intentionally eats poisonous berries, but lives. Villanova, Furman, Rhode Island, and Harvard sleep in shifts, trying to protect each other. Jackson State leaves Delaware, Tennessee Tech, and Northwestern State because he doesn't like their plan to kill more people. Alabama State convinces Northern Arizona to not kill him, but he's able to kill Northern Arizona instead. Dixie State unknowingly eats poisonous berries. Indiana State intentionally eats poisonous berries, but lives. Prairie View A&M sets off a string of trap explosives, killing Cal Poly, Youngstown State, and Central Connecticut State. Austin Peay stays awake all night on pure adrenaline. Butler watches Samford die from killer bee stings. Arkansas Pine Bluff receives matches from an unknown sponsor. Marist sets off a string of trap explosives, killing UT Martin, Idaho State, Illinois State, and Stetson. Murray State receives a gourmet 5-course meal from an unknown sponsor. Dartmouth, Montana State, and Portland State have deep conversations and discuss the challenges that will come the next morning. South Carolina State secretly shoots a poisonous blow dart at Weber State's chest. SEMO steals VMI's supplies while he is asleep. Elon sets up camp for the night. Delaware State spears Merrimack in the back with a trident. Southern Utah climbs up a tree to get some rest. Houston Baptist sees a fire but stays in place. Robert Morris feels delirious and forgets where he is. New Hampshire attempts to climb up a super tall tree but falls to his death. Bethune-Cookman, Jacksonville, Sam Houston State, and Western Carolina form a suicide pact, killing themselves so that nobody else can. Eastern Washington attacks William and Mary, but Dayton notices and protects him, killing Eastern Washington. Nicholls State, Long Island, Cornell, and Abilene Christian sleep in shifts, trying to protect each other. Day 3. Simo sees Texas Southern, Dayton, and Portland State. He tries to trap them and ends up only killing Portland State. Gardner-Webb and McNeese State create a fort out of sticks and leaves. Austin Peay overhears Tennessee Tech and Harvard talking in the distance. Nicholls State receives a bow and arrow from a sponsor. Eastern Illinois climbs up a tree to make a resting spot. Tennessee State and Houston Baptist work together for the day. Sacramento State, Eastern Kentucky, Northwestern State, and Morgan State hunt for other tributes. Indiana State searches for water. James Madison, Penn, Southeastern Louisiana, and Dartmouth raid Maine's camp while he's away. South Carolina State sees smoke rising in the distance and wonders who's responsible. Alabama State sees smoke rising in the distance and also wonders who's responsible. Towson sees Rhode Island, but decides to stay quiet and let him pass. South Dakota State tries to kill Furman, but he's able to escape. VMI receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Murray State receives medical supplies from a sponsor. Southern Utah sings a song while searching for a food source. He finally finds some wild berries. ETSU receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Kennesaw State, Jackson State, Alabama A&M, and Robert Morris hunt for other tributes. Florida A&M and Grambling State create a fort out of sticks and leaves. Brown practices his knife throwing and archery. San Diego receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Arkansas Pine Bluff and Chattanooga create an alliance. NC Central receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Montana State and Cornell create a fort out of sticks and leaves. Alcorn State searches for food. William and Mary searches for water. Delaware State defeats Drake in a fight, but spares his life. Howard receives a picture of his family from a sponsor. Prairie View A&M has a mild panic attack. Butler runs away from Marist. Villanova sees Elon, but decides to stay quiet and let him pass. South Dakota receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Delaware and Stephen F. Austin work together for the day. Long Island and North Alabama create an alliance. Princeton and Tarleton State work together for the day. Abilene Christian sees poison fog, but manages to escape. Night 3. Abilene Christian kills Murray State with a handmade weapon. Villanova dies of dysentery. Texas Southern involuntarily passes out from sheer exhaustion. Tarleton State, in a cruel fate, asks Marist to kill Delaware State or Chattanooga. She decides to kill Delaware State. Morgan State and Delaware hold hands and cry together. Penn unknowingly eats poisonous berries. Howard cries himself to sleep. Brown receives medical supplies and nuts from an unknown sponsor. Montana State thinks about his family. VMI accidentally walks over a landmine. Indiana State, Austin Peay, Tennessee State, and South Dakota sleep in shifts, trying to protect each other. Alcorn State sets off a string of explosives, killing Sacramento State. Gardner-Webb, Southern Utah, and Alabama State try to ambush Harvard, Grambling State, and South Dakota State, who kill them instead. Arkansas Pine Bluff dies from an infection. Prairie View A&M pushes Northwestern State off a cliff during an argument. South Carolina State receives a hatchet and water from an unknown sponsor. Dartmouth and Towson sleep in shifts, placing full trust in each other. Rhode Island receives medical supplies and nuts from an unknown sponsor. McNeese State looks at the night stars and sky and wonders if it's real. Drake feels delirious and forgets where he is. Florida A&M, Princeton, and Robert Morris sleep in shifts, each hoping the other two do not betray them. Jackson State sleeps in small increments, awaking to every little noise. Long Island begs Eastern Illinois to kill him. He refuses, keeping Long Island alive. North Alabama leaves Dayton, Tennessee Tech, and Cornell because he doesn't like their plan to kill more people. Maine and Alabama A&M tell stories about their districts and lives to each other. Butler cries himself to sleep. ETSU and San Diego tell stories about their districts and lives to each other. Stephen F. Austin begins to cry. James Madison approaches Elon's campsite and asks to create an alliance. Eastern Kentucky falls asleep in a tree. SEMO and Kennesaw State create a fort for the night. William and Mary, Furman, and Houston Baptist discuss a game plan for the morning. Nicholls State sees a fire, but stays in place. Southeastern Louisiana cooks himself some squirrel and enjoys eating more than he thought. NC Central begins to cry. The surviving tributes: Abilene Christian, Houston Baptist, Eastern Kentucky, Tennessee Tech, Elon, Florida A&M, Tennessee State, Furman, Tarleton State, Alabama A&M, Grambling State, Harvard, Stephen F. Austin, Howard, ETSU, McNeese State, Southeastern Louisiana, Indiana State, Jackson State, SEMO, South Dakota State, James Madison, Kennesaw State, South Dakota, South Carolina State, San Diego, Long Island, Marist, Eastern Illinois, Texas Southern, Drake, Prairie View A&M, Alcorn State, NC Central, Austin P., Brown, William and Mary, North Alabama, Butler, Princeton, Nicholls State, Rhode Island, Morgan State, Montana State, Towson, Delaware, Dayton, Cornell, Dartmouth, Robert Morris, Chattanooga, and Maine. 52 remain. Day 4. Austin P. convinces McNeese State to not kill him, but then he's able to kill McNeese State instead. Kennesaw State makes a slingshot with materials from the ground. Towson receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Howard, Chattanooga, and Maine hunt for other tributes. Southeastern Louisiana searches for water and firewood. North Alabama sings a song while searching for a food source. He finally finds some wild berries. Tennessee State picks up non-poisonous fruit from a tree. Tennessee Tech throws rocks at Butler from a hiding spot in a tree. Alcorn State sprains his ankle while running away from San Diego. Delaware defeats Indiana State in a fight, but spares his life. Texas Southern sees poison fog, but manages to escape. Princeton makes a wooden spear from tree branches. South Dakota hides in a bush, terrified and scared. Stephen F. Austin receives a water spile from a sponsor. Drake tries to sleep in order to reduce stress. Dayton dreams about home back at his district. NC Central is pricked by thorns while picking berries. Robert Morris receives healthy food from a sponsor. South Carolina State chases Morgan State. Florida A&M tends to Nicholls State's wounds. South Dakota State and Furman create an alliance. Prairie View A&M chases Brown. Houston Baptist chases Jackson State. Eastern Kentucky, Elon, Cornell, William and Mary, and Rhode Island hunt for other tributes. Grambling State discovers a hidden pathway. James Madison practices his knife throwing and archery. Marist practices her knife throwing and archery. Tarleton State tries to kill a squirrel with an arrow. SEMO, Dartmouth, Long Island, and Montana State hunt for other tributes. Harvard searches for water. Alabama A&M picks non-poisonous fruit from a tree. Eastern Illinois hides in a bush, terrified and scared. Abilene Christian fishes in the water for some food. ETSU receives healthy food from a sponsor. Night 4. Montana State receives matches from an unknown sponsor. Harvard and Robert Morris kill Austin Peay with their bare hands. Morgan State, Tarleton State, and Princeton have deep conversation and discuss the challenges that will come in the next morning. Dayton, Delaware, Dartmouth, Indiana State, and SEMO aggressively track down and kill Grambling State. Houston Baptist stays awake all night on pure adrenaline. NC Central dies in his sleep from a deadly infection. Maine shamelessly kills Abilene Christian while he's resting. Rhode Island sleeps in small increments, awaking to every little noise. Texas Southern and William & Mary tell stories about their districts and lives to each other. Eastern Kentucky dies of dysentery. Alabama A&M slips on a frozen river and drowns. Florida A&M starts a campfire with materials on the ground. ETSU and Howard huddle for warmth and love. Tennessee Tech and Drake huddle for warmth and love. Brown and Jackson State run into Elon, Marist, and Chattanooga and make temporary peace. Tennessee State receives an iPad from an unknown sponsor. Nicholls State wounds North Alabama in a confrontation, but spares his life. San Diego quietly hums in the night. Furman approaches James Madison's campsite and asks to create an alliance. Towson approaches South Carolina State's campsite and asks to create an alliance. Butler thinks about his family. Long Island, Kennesaw State, and Cornell discuss a game plan for the morning. Stephen F. Austin looks at the night stars and sky and wonders if it's real. South Dakota State falls asleep, shivering from a fever. Prairie View A&M decides to sing himself to sleep. Alcorn State tends to his wounds with leaves and water. Southeastern Louisiana receives a gourmet 5-course meal from an unknown sponsor. South Dakota questions his sanity. Day 5. Houston Baptist, Maine, and Indiana State try to ambush Eastern Illinois, James Madison, and Robert Morris, who kill them instead. Long Island, Texas Southern, Nicholls State, and Towson hunt for other tributes. Southeastern Louisiana tricks San Diego into eating poisonous berries. Chattanooga sets off a string of trap explosives, killing South Carolina State and Tennessee Tech. South Dakota State picks non-poisonous fruit from a tree. Furman and Prairie View A&M create a fort out of sticks and leaves. Harvard tries to sleep in order to reduce stress. Florida A&M has a mild panic attack. Stephen F. Austin receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Marist receives healing ointment from a sponsor. Delaware picks non-poisonous fruit from a tree. Montana State and Alcorn State create a fort out of sticks and leaves. Howard tries to kill Tennessee State, but he's able to escape. Brown fails and scrapes his leg while running away from ETSU. Drake receives a water spile from a sponsor. Dartmouth defeats South Dakota in a fight, but spares his life. Princeton, Jackson State, Butler, and Cornell hunt for other tributes. Rhode Island, Dayton, North Alabama, and Tarleton State raid Morgan State's camp while he's away. Elon, William & Mary, Kennesaw State, and SEMO hunt for other tributes. Night 5. James Madison is stabbed in his sleep by South Dakota State. Towson chases Marist for over a mile before making the kill. Montana State, SEMO, and Howard sing songs together, hoping for the best. Robert Morris unknowingly eats poisonous berries. Morgan State stays awake all night on pure adrenaline. Elon slips on a frozen river and drowns. Drake kills Princeton as he tries to steal supplies from his camp. Brown dies mysteriously after going on a diatribe about the Hunger Games. Rhode Island begs Delaware to kill him. He reluctantly agrees, killing Rhode Island. Furman falls asleep in a tree. South Dakota and Harvard run into North Alabama, Stephen F. Austin, and Cornell and make temporary peace. Butler and Prairie View A&M run into Chattanooga, Tarleton State, and Alcorn State and make temporary peace. Dayton sets off a string of trap explosives, killing Eastern Illinois, Dartmouth, Jackson State, and southeastern Louisiana. 28 remain. Nicholls State and Texas Southern commit a double suicide together. 26 remain. Kennesaw State and Florida A&M create a fort for the night. Long Island tends to William & Mary's wounds. ETSU poisons Tennessee State's drink, but Tennessee State knowingly switches the drinks and ETSU dies. 25 remain. Day 6. Kennesaw State, Dayton, and Florida A&M hunt down and kill Tarleton State. 24 remain. Cornell receives medical supplies from a sponsor. Stephen F. Austin discovers a hidden pathway. South Dakota tends to SEMO's wounds. Long Island and William & Mary hunt for other tributes. Howard injures himself tripping over a log. Chattanooga questions his sanity. Montana State is pricked by thorns while picking berries. Furman thinks about his family and starts crying. Morgan State, Prairie View A&M, Towson, South Dakota State, and Drake hunt for other tributes. Tennessee State defeats Alcorn State in a fight, but spares his life. North Alabama sees Butler, but decides to stay quiet and let him pass. Harvard fishes in the water for some food. Delaware receives medical supplies from a sponsor. The surviving tributes: Furman, Long Island, Harvard, Furman, Long Island, Harvard, South Dakota State, SEMO, Florida A&M, Stephen F. Austin, Kennesaw State, Drake, Tennessee State, Delaware, Dayton, Howard, Cornell, Towson, Prairie View A&M, Chattanooga, William & Mary, Morgan State, North Alabama, Alcorn State, Montana State, Butler. Night 6. Alcorn State, South Dakota State, and Dayton kill Montana State and Delaware with bows and arrows. 22 remain. William & Mary receives a gourmet 5-course meal from an unknown sponsor. Butler attempts to climb a tree, but falls on Tennessee State with a pointed sword, killing them both. 20 remain. Towson secretly shoots a poisonous blow dart at Stephen F. Austin's chest. 19 remain. SEMO wounds Furman in a confrontation, but spares his life. Harvard falls asleep in a tree. Chattanooga sleeps in small increments, awaking to every little noise. Florida A&M lets Cornell into his campsite. Kennesaw State sees a fire, but stays in place. Morgan State starts a campfire with materials on the ground. Prairie View A&M convinces North Alabama to stand guard for the night while he sleeps. Howard tries to treat his infection with water and grass. South Dakota lets Long Island into his campsite. Day 7. Florida A&M is trampled to death by boulders falling down a mountain. 18 remain. South Dakota State defeats Prairie View A&M in a fight, but spares his life. Drake sets off a string of trap explosives, killing North Alabama, SEMO, and William & Mary. 15 remain. Alcorn State makes a wooden spear from tree branches. Dayton thinks about his family and starts crying. Towson sees poison fog, but manages to escape. After hearing footsteps, South Dakota catches Long Island from behind guard and kills him. Kennesaw State spears Howard in the abdomen. Furman secretly wounds Cornell and leaves him to die. 12 remain. Morgan State secretly shoots a poisonous blow dart at Harvard's chest. 11 remain. Chattanooga sings a song while searching for a food source. He finally finds some wild berries. Surviving tributes: Morgan State, Kennesaw State, South Dakota State, Drake, Dayton, Prairie View A&M, Chattanooga, Towson, Alcorn State, Furman. Night 7. Drake falls into a deep valley and dies. 10 remain. Towson stays awake all night on pure adrenaline. Kennesaw State huddles up next to a fire and cooks the meat he hunted earlier in the day. Furman shamelessly kills Dayton while he's resting. 9 remain. Alcorn State approaches Morgan State's campsite and asks to create an alliance. Prairie View A&M sets up camp for the night. Chattanooga tends to South Dakota State's wounds. South Dakota feels delirious and forgets where he is. Day 8. Morgan State strangles Kennesaw State after engaging in an argument. 8 remain. Alcorn State makes a wooden spear from tree branches. South Dakota sees smoke rising in the distance and wonders who's responsible. Towson sings a song while searching for a food source. He finally finds some wild berries. Prairie View A&M has a mild panic attack. Furman sings a song while searching for a food source. He finally finds some wild berries. Chattanooga steals food and water from South Dakota State while he isn't looking. Night 8. Alcorn State bleeds out from a wound left mildly treated. 7 remain. South Dakota receives a gourmet 5-course meal from an unknown sponsor. Towson starts a campfire with materials on the ground. Prairie View A&M starts a campfire with materials on the ground. Furman involuntarily passes out from sheer exhaustion. Morgan State receives an iPad from an unknown sponsor. Day 9. Towson receives a water spile from an unknown sponsor. Chattanooga poisons Furman's drink. He drinks it and dies. 6 remain. Morgan State receives a picture of his family from a sponsor. Prairie View A&M wonders what South Dakota State is up to. South Dakota receives healthy food from a sponsor. Night 9. South Dakota State, Morgan State, Towson, and Chattanooga chase and kill Prairie View A&M. 5 remain. South Dakota thinks about winning and what life would be like. Day 10. Chattanooga repeatedly stabs Morgan State to death with a katana. 4 remain. Towson falls and scrapes his leg while running away from South Dakota. South Dakota State dreams about home back at his district. Night 10. South Dakota shoots 2 arrows into Chattanooga's body. 3 remain. Towson and South Dakota State sleep in shifts, placing full trust in each other. Day 11. South Dakota tries to sleep in order to reduce stress. South Dakota State severely wounds Towson and leaves him to die. 2 remain. Night 11. South Dakota is repeatedly awoken by nightmares. South Dakota State tries to sing himself to sleep. Day 12. South Dakota State chases South Dakota. Night 12. South Dakota State, overwhelmed with anger, bashes South Dakota's head against a rock several times. Congratulations, South Dakota State University. You are the FCS Hunger Games 3 champion, an accomplishment that anyone could be proud of. You've come a long way, had to kill a lot of tributes, but you've come out on top, and we all have a thing or two that we could learn from you. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been a blast. I can't believe just how much support has been for the Hunger Games series here in the FCS. It's been such a fun ride to be able to create this content for you guys so consistently. I love doing it. I love supporting the community, and I love chatting with you guys. This is the first time that I've been able to chat with you guys while the Hunger Games has been going on, so I feel very blessed with this opportunity. I would do this again 1,000 times. In fact, I feel like I could create my own Hunger Games that's even better than the Hunger Games simulator that we use today. If that interests you, and you want to help out, then absolutely shoot me a message. We'll deep dive into Google Sheets and we'll get something created. Maybe not today, maybe not in a month from now, but sometime, because I think this is a fantastic way to chill out with the community and do something that's fun and goofy. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in again, and I'll see you later.